Hello and welcome to Audiobook Reviews. In this review, I will be discussing The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. And buckle up because while I did not hate the book, and I will say that right off the bat, I don't think this is necessarily a bad book, but boy, are there so many things I really did not like about it and the way certain things were done. It is really a book that it's okay. There's a lot that held it back. There are good things too, but really overweighed by the bad. So I'm going to discuss both good and bad with the book, but just kind of want to note there will definitely be some ranting in here because there were just some things that really annoyed me with the book overall. Now, I want to preface this with I picked this up because I actually found it's probably the, I guess, mass market paperback version. Um, Not a hardcover, but a really large book still. And I picked it up because I found it in a store called Dollar Tree, which is kind of like a 99-cent store where everything's a dollar. So bought the book for a dollar. You really can't beat that bargain. Now, I'm always on the lookout for deals with books, and mostly the only reason I even look at stores like that is I once found The Gathering Storm brand new hardcover for $3 in a Dollar General. So you never know what you're going to find. Definitely worth looking. So I picked it up. Now, right off the bat, the cover of the book really didn't sell me. I was actually expecting sci-fi elements, just kind of the way that it looks. Yes, it's knight on a horse, but between the font of the title and kind of the angular way it looks, I don't know. I was expecting kind of a mix sci-fi fantasy, and I thought this could be interesting. This is probably going to be something really different. Now, what it turned out to be is just your standard fantasy. Uh, the Forgetting Moon seems to borrow so much from so many different other works. It really is one of those things where, you can definitely see when there are influences in a story. Some writers will try to pay homage, other writers will just have things that are a bit similar, but so much of the world and the things that are done just seems really to be borrowed from other people, and that is something that really drives me a bit nuts. It's kind of made worse by the fact that in the author's note for The Forgetting Moon, at the very beginning, the author talks about how he always wanted to write a story of the orphan, the boy who doesn't know who his parents are because he himself was adopted. So I can understand that. He brings up everything from Luke Skywalker to Lloyd Alexander, Robert Jordan, George R. R. Martin, all these different classics. Now, I didn't bring up, he brings up David Eddings too, but if you've seen my review in the book area, you know how I feel about that. Uh, so, brings up just all these classic bits of fantasy that use that, and granted, that has become very much a trope, but then proceeds to really not offer anything even particularly original. And that is unfortunate. I wanted to like this story, and like I said, I didn't hate it. I don't think it's overall bad, but it's definitely not good. It's okay. There are some flashes, and I think Durfee has potential to get better, but really needs to kick it up into gear with the next book in this series because this one has some flaws. So I've already been ranting for long enough. Let's talk a little bit about what The Forgetting Moon is about. It takes place on the Five Isles. It's a very medieval Europe type of setup. And the basis essentially is there's these different religious groups. The main one we're kind of looking at is called the Church of Liajum, and it's basically Catholicism. Very strongly rooted in it. The cathedrals, the way it's kind of set up, the hierarchy, the worship, incense, this, that, and it's based on you have 1,000 years ago. Elijah, who was kind of the savior character and one of five warrior angels. It is the Five Warrior Angels series. And he was sacrificed on a cross, essentially, to save the world and blah, blah, blah. Most people have heard that, whether or not you're religious or not, you're probably familiar with the story of Jesus. That's what we have here. It really follows that, and there are a few differences. For example, we have a mother, Mia, which, I mean, you could have at least thought of something a little more original than Mia. Mia, Maria, Spanish for Mary. But in this story, the mother Mia is the wife of Elijah, and they also had a son, Rigel. And basically, this is where the three main offshooting religions come. We have the Church of Elijah, who follow what was written by the other warrior angels about him. You have this other group that was following a religion based on his son, and thinking only he can do it. And then you have the religion following the Mother Mia and what she says is the truth. And they've all been, apparently, they all wrote different things. You get excerpts throughout every chapter, has a little excerpt of one of these different texts, and you find that out. Now, it's not completely unreasonable when you look at the fact that most of the main world religions today are all based on the same God, the same basis. You have, Christianity, Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, all based on the same thing originally and just went about it very different ways. We've seen lots of religious wars from this thing, so I don't find that to be unreasonable. I just think you can do a religious war and have it be original. There's definitely more that could have been done there. For example, if you look at many of Brandon Sanderson's works, he's very fascinated by religion, uses it a lot. It's very important to several stories, but it's different, it's unique. It's not just an imprint of Catholicism with more than kind of added in. So right there, that kind of basis was a little bit weak. The Five Isles definitely seems like medieval type Europe with all the different United Kingdom countries definitely seeming to be represented as well. But we have that kind of basis, and basically, there's a prophecy saying that fiery absolution will come, and the weapons and angel stones of the warrior angels will come back and need to be used, essentially. And that's kind of what we're looking at. That's the general plot. So we follow a few different characters. The main character, I would say, being Nail, who is the titular orphan child, doesn't know anything about his parents. He's being raised by a very gruff and kind of mean-spirited man who's training him to mine. We also follow the princesses Jondrelin and Tala in the kingdom seat, basically the capital, Amadon, on the same continent. And those are kind of the main groups. We also take a look at some of the other people that are in Amadon and the castle. We take a look at some of the people who are in the army of the Angel Prince, who's are kind of our main antagonist. He's coming from the Sora Sevier and has already conquered two out of the remaining four isles here out of the five isles and is now coming to destroy Golconda, where most of our story is taking place. Also in the story, there are the Valley elves, there are the Ogles, orcs, and there are the dwarves, dwarves. So you using different names and slightly different features and mannerisms, the Valley, instead of being, I mean, they definitely are elves in every shape of the word, but they're looked at as extremely crafty in this. So it's a little bit different, though. You've seen that still in other places, and the dwarves are kind of just said they're irrelevant. They don't really care, besides the two that were, or the one that we're introduced to and the other that's mentioned. So already world building, not the most original, and the basis of the main character, as brought up even in the author's note, is a trope on purpose, because that's what he wanted to write. Now, you can write what you want to write, but if you're going to have a kind of trope for a main character, maybe be a little bit more creative with the world building. And if you're not going to be particularly creative with the world building, you really better have something that makes this good, that elevates it. And I really found that to be lacking. the characters as well fall really, really flat. There's not a lot of depth into the characters. Uh, we never really see a whole lot of any sort of development from Nail. He wants to know about his parents, but that's kind of it. He's kind of left as that caricature. He wants to know about his parents, and yeah, that's really it. He doesn't really grow, and I'm gonna get into very shortly with the spoiler section a few more details there, but that's kind of it. And you have the two kind of main female characters, the princesses Tala and Jondralyn. At first, early on, seemed like they were going to be the characters that actually were given a little bit more depth, but then it was just kind of taken away. You have Jondralyn, who is the caricature, extremely beautiful, most beautiful woman of the world, princess, and we're told at first that she actually has these lofty goals and that she's going to fight for them. And as I'll get into once again in the spoiler section, not really. And then Tal's younger, and we see really a lot of just kind of stereotypical behavior as you'd expect from a teenage girl from her as well. And there's just not a ton. And even the other characters, it's just so much of it's very predictable and it just feels really familiar. And for me, at least, I felt like I had almost read this story before because I've read a lot of fantasy and it just didn't really offer up anything particularly original. Now, I'm going to get in a bit more at this point into spoilers. If you do want to skip the spoiler section, check the description. As always, I will have a note there of where you can skip past to because I definitely want to talk about some deeper pieces here. So I'm going to start with Nail. And why, as the main character, you're starting already, like I said, with the kind of the trope, the orphan and from a small town, and finds out he might be the chosen one. And we know right off the bat, the prologue shows us Shawcroft fighting off these Bloodwood assassins. So we're expected to believe these Bloodwood assassins are just crazy good and amazing, but the first look we get is them being killed by Shawcroft and him being fine and raising Nail. And we're told we're supposed to care about Nail and all these secrets, but it's just you're never really given particularly a reason to. You know, he's the chosen one. He's listed out. They do pull Durfee pulls kind of a Harry Potter where there's a kind of a dopey kid who could also be the chosen one because of some things mentioned, and I assume that's going to come back later. But he's supposed to be the chosen one, and somehow the Angel Prince Eros he finds out where he is, and so he sends his army to invade the town of Gallows Haven, where he lives. They kill everyone he's captured. He's made a slave, which apparently is also part of the prophecy, but Shawcroft ends up rescuing him. He saves some of his other friends, leaves specifically his kind of rival, who was the son of a lord, much more important than him, and the girl he liked, who left him to be with him. Leaves both of them, kind of makes that choice. So already we're his first real choice here. Not exactly a great one, but he then is supposed to lead them away, and his mentor Shawcroft is killed, but tells him where to go and what to do, and to at all costs go get this ancient weapon, the Forgetting Moon, as an axe, and an angel stone, get it to this abbey, and meet up with the other people, part of one of the sects, the Brethren of Mia, who are the group that follows the Mother Mia. And okay, they kind of go on, and with these characters, none of them are particularly in depth. There are some people who end up dying along the way, and it's kind of that bit. But with Nail, he just doesn't really particularly seem to care all that much. And it's mentioned that he was brought up to specifically be kind of unfeeling, and he had a hard life, but he doesn't really care. And we're expected to believe that everybody just instinctively follows him and lets him be the leader. Granted, he's the one who kind of knows where they're going, but it's more than that. They really look at him as the leader, not just the only guy who knows where he's going, but at the same time, completely then turn on him at other points. This is also, there's the dopey character, Doki, who, even the name, who is the one who could also be the chosen one, seems to be brought up, tries to insert comic relief at really ill-advised times and just kind of takes you out of these serious situations because you're talking about, oh, well, this person just died or this person's dying. Like, oh, my ass itches because I soiled myself back a while ago and haven't been able to wash it out. It's like it really, really takes you out of it. So with that character of Nail, he just doesn't really particularly learn and doesn't give you anything to root for him as a character. At the end of the story, too, he basically just decides, I haven't told me who my parents are. I'm just gonna leave. Which another huge problem with that is this group he's with, the brother Namiya, through other plot pieces that happen, they basically are wanted by both sides. The enemy of the Angel Prince and also the Gulkana, that kingdom, they both want some of the people in this group to be killed, and they decide, let's go through the town that's right between the armies of both, because nothing could go wrong there. Doesn't make any sense at all. We get an extremely tropey battle where Hawkwood, the turncoat who was on the side of the Angel Prince but came over because he fell in love with the beautiful Princess Jondrelin, pretty tropey there. He's in a fight and he's losing, but instead of killing him, his other fellow assassin decides to look in his eyes and monologue and ends up getting a cheap shot from Nail to kill him. And it's just, it feels like every tropey action movie with the plot going on in the castle, because I'm not going to have time to get into nearly anything. I know this is already going to be a bit of a long video, but the thing that kind of annoyed me the most about it was the whole plot with Tala. She is being led on this wild goose chase because there's an assassin, part of these Bloodwoods, once again, which we're told are supposed to be terrible, but we're constantly seeing getting killed in dumb ways or in good ways too. But just they get killed. They're just normal people, but they're supposed to be something real special. But this assassin who's living in like the secret ways of the castle is having her do certain tasks and do all these things to get an antidote for a friend that this assassin poisoned. The secret tunnels and ways are brought up quite a lot. They're very important. And there's a few things that really annoy me about it. Is first of all, when she first meets the assassin and gets stabbed, her immediate thought is, I can't tell anyone. And then her friend gets stabbed and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this could happen to anyone. Like, well, yeah, like it happened to you. You're not going to tell, but all of a sudden the same exact thing happens to your friend, and you better tell now. So she tells some people, and they don't really do a whole lot about it. They don't really be particularly careful, and it's nothing really changes. And she still, while not having really told everything, she still kind of goes along with this whole plan, and nobody seems to realize that, oh, this girl suddenly is getting sick. Maybe it was because she got stabbed by that assassin. No, it's nobody notices or thinks about that at all. She's even the girl is even later assaulted by the Grand Vicar, and we learn kind of more of that subplot. And no one notices this wound. I guess we're not told. We're told you don't always feel them because the special assassin blade is numb, but not that they're invisible. They're clearly not, and no one brings it up. But she goes on this whole thing doing all these things that don't really make that much sense, but you're led to believe this assassin basically is all knowing, knows and sees literally everything that happens, and wants these things done because it's going to help the country fall. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's the whole thing is just kind of a weird thing in the middle of this and just makes you think of some other YA type fiction. I can't think of what it is. I know I've read some plot similar to this before, and it just that's that. And then there's the big reveal that it's actually one of the Valley princesses, and I just didn't care at the time. Like I remember right off the bat thinking like this was a female, and then everybody else thinks it's a male. And they made the Valley where basically they just acted suspicious all the time because you're not supposed to trust anyone, and so it wasn't a huge shock that that was the place. The fact that it was a valley and whatnot, and they have some slight magical powers and yada yada. But it's just the whole plot didn't really make a lot of sense, and I fail to believe that even if she's spending all of her time not out in the public in the secret ways, how is she knowing all these different things as the assassin? How does she know literally every secret of the kingdom? It just doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense anyway, and that's why I was not particularly invested in that plot line when it ended because I'm like, yeah, whatever. The other piece too with John who goes from you're told that she's the classically beautiful princess, but that she wants more, and she morphs into a complete caricature of I accidentally killed someone who tripped and fell onto my sword, so I must be a great warrior even though I've trained for a short amount of time and was had my ass kicked by my brother. And yeah, she just turns into this complete caricature, and she ends up. It seems like she's still alive. I honestly thought she deserved to die. Won't lie, because she ends up starting a fight. She wants to duel at the very end with this insanely good swordsman, Galt, who's from the Angel Prince's army. We followed him a little bit here and there as well, and she duels him and seems to honestly think like she has a chance and is summarily just destroyed. And good, because come on, it's just I know she's a princess and maybe you're trying to say like, oh, this is what happens when you're prideful, but it's the character turned completely into a caricature. Like, I did this, I will prevail. And she finds out that she's one of the five warrior angels and thinks she's unstoppable. Maybe that's why you don't tell people about it. They don't tell Nail about it, and they seem really worried about what will happen, but they tell her, and nobody seems to care that there's all this going on. But the whole scenes leading up to that really made no sense. We know that her brother, the king, wants her to be killed because he's afraid that she's going to try and usurp him, which she wants to do. So he sends his lover. That was a big twist that he has a lover. Also, wasn't all that surprising with several other pieces that were brought up. But he sends them there, and so he's supposed to find a way to have her die at the hands of the enemy. And we find out at the same time, the Angel Prince, he wants Galt to be killed as well, and he's dealing with his assassin, who I talked about, is summarily executed later after this. But so apparently, Leif Chaparral, who is the king's lover and in charge of this expedition, he convinces the princess that he's going to go and talk to the Angel Prince's army in Parlay. But really, what he apparently does is goes over there and he apparently does literally nothing. But they say, "Hey, we'll give you a bunch of money if you let us betray one of our people and just hand him to you." And he's like, "Okay," and that happens. And there are so many pieces that don't make sense because how did anyone know it was going to work out the way that it did? Now, the Angel Prince did say he was going to betray Galt, so he sent him along. Makes sense. And I can even see the assassin figuring out who he was and having him take off his helmet. But he just kind of leaves him there and just assumes it'll all be fine. Why doesn't the assassin just kill him and say it was them? And also, why would Leaf just agree to be like, oh yeah, you just give us him and don't take care of my problem? It's not even like the, strangers on train thing. It's not the tit for tat. It's like you're supposed to kill him and maybe also kill the princess like I want. But, she ends up kind of getting it when she decides to duel anyway, but that who knew that was gonna happen? Just this whole thing, the exchange doesn't really make a lot of sense. He's just gonna be like, I just care about gold now, and okay, whatever. What this really comes down to, one of my biggest problems with this story is the fact that you are constantly told instead of being shown. Everything about this, there are all these little secrets and notes and things that, if they were revealed differently, would be really good twists. There are some things that we're told just kind of offhand, like, oh, this happened. And you're like, okay, that would have been better revealed in an extremely different way. And that happens so much. You're just kind of told things. Even the little excerpts from the different texts, the epigraphs at the beginning of each chapter, usually there specifically, it just feels like it's narrating to you the world building that you need to know. And it really, really shows that Durfee is a new author and definitely needs to work on how he writes. I think he has potential, but like I said, it's just that so much of this book feels borrowed. It seemed at many points it was trying to kind of be more like A Song of Ice and Fire, the whole Game of Thrones approach of being very, very dark. and all the people acted in the kind of predictable dark ways, but they never really wanted to take it too particularly far. Dark themes are brought up, but it kind of glosses over a little bit because it didn't seems like you didn't want to commit to that. You definitely get some Tolkien-esque influence in the way the world's set up, just with the different groups of people, the elves, the dwarves, the humans, there's the evil humans. We get brought up that apparently there will definitely be dragons at some point because they were the creatures of the underworld brought up. We do have, mermaids around too. So that's something a little bit different, but so much of this just seemed borrowed. And then the narrative itself just seemed designed to just tell you everything. Don't tell me, show me, maybe let me find out about some things later in a better way, and that's going to have a much better narrative. It's really, I think Durfee has potential, but this book just does not stand on its own. I will be interested at some point to read the second book. Definitely not high on my list based on this review as a whole, but I'm interested to see if he can improve. The core concept, he's a decent writer, and he's got some things that are a little bit different, but this book just felt too normal. There wasn't really a lot of originality. There were hints of it, but so much of this just seemed like whatever you've already read fantasy wise. So I look forward to seeing in the next book if he can improve. If the next book does not improve, I will very likely not actually read the whole series, but that's kind of my thoughts here. Like I said, I don't think this was a terrible book, and I didn't hate it, but I definitely do not think this is a good book as it stands now. It has a lot of flaws. I got into just a few of them in the spoiler section. I could go on for a lot longer, and I'm trying not to based on the length of this video already. But I think there's potential here. So if you like just kind of classic normal fantasy, you may enjoy the book. It's not a bad book if you're not super well read on fantasy, you might even like it more because you won't necessarily see a lot of the same repeated concepts. But I don't think it's a bad book. I think it is worth giving a try and that Durfee has some potential, but this was not executed well. That said, this has been an audiobook review of The Forgetting Moon. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, though hopefully not quite as angry, feel free to subscribe.